The full slate of presidential candidates is not even set for 2024, but there are real and lingering questions about the last election.
You're supposed to vote one person, one vote, and now people are telling me they have 5 to 10 ballots. That's what got my curiosity going.
And those kinds of reports got our curiosity going. This week, a full measure investigation into an imperfect system open to errors and, in some cases, yes, fraud.
Were people actually saying to you, I can get you 5 votes?
Yes.
The Panama Canal is considered one of the marvels of the modern world, connecting oceans and economies.
Could you talk a little bit about the 2 Iranian ships that are parked outside the Panama Canal?
We look at concerns about the canal and who may be trying to control some key shipping choke points.
Because you'd be in jail.
And for those who think politics as usual is more dirty than usual,
the election of 1828 is really a mudslinging election.
We take a look back at America's roots of rough and tumble campaigns.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. As we plow forward with the 2024 presidential campaign, there's a lingering ghost of elections past. Polls over the years consistently show a majority of Americans don't trust the election process. Donald Trump claims the 2020 election was stolen from him. Joe Biden says 60 election challenges were dismissed by courts because they had no merit. Now, as the two men are squaring up for a possible rematch, we set out to learn whether any documented irregularities emerged after the dust settled in 2020. Our full measure investigation found dozens of instances where there were election problems or errors that typically favored Biden. Today, we highlight a few notable cases and dissect how voter fraud can happen.
This is my brother's ballot.
David Bentley says ballots keep arriving in the mailbox at his Maryland home, addressed to his brother, who hasn't lived here for a decade.
2 live ballots, 1 person lives here.
So tell me where he lives now, and has he been voting there?
He lives somewhere outside of Corning, New York, and he has voted in the last 2 presidential elections up there. What's preventing just live ballots going out that anyone can just grab and kind of, vote twice if you want, or 3 or 4 times?
9 states and Washington, D.C. automatically send presidential election ballots to anyone on the voter rolls. Maryland offers to mail ballots automatically forever after a first request. People can even have ballots sent via the internet and could receive them while living most anywhere else in the world.
I would assume that each state would kind of check their records to make sure that they don't have people who no longer have a driver's license or a state ID. They would kind of inquire about that, like write them going, hey, are you still here?
That's our first category of voting issues, election processes that could open the door to fraud. Numerous court actions and audits call into question systems used to cast millions of ballots in the 2020 election. In Wisconsin, absentee ballot drop boxes used in 2020 were illegally approved by the Elections Commission, according to the state Supreme Court. Had that ruling come before the election, it could have had a big impact. 200,000 drop box ballots skipped normal voter ID requirements in a state Biden won by just 20,600 votes. In Michigan, the state's nonpartisan auditor found that the Secretary of State who oversaw the 2020 election, a Democrat, broke the law by failing to properly maintain voter rolls, heightening the risk that ineligible people voted. She says no elections were impacted by the issues. And since February of last year, Los Angeles County, California, New York City, and North Carolina belatedly agreed to remove a combined 2 million ineligible people who shouldn't have been on the voter rolls in 2020, but were. Colorado agreed to do the same after the watchdog group Judicial Watch sued to force the removals.
When past voting practices are deemed unconstitutional or illegal, there's no firm process to go back and correct the elections or even figure out what the impact was. No independent authority actively monitors for voting issues, and producing evidence of fraud, or for that matter, proof of no fraud, can be equally as challenging, leaving both sides to lob accusations that can't be definitively resolved.
It's going to take a while.
There are plenty of allegations surrounding the 2020 election, when Joe Biden accomplished a remarkable overnight come-from-behind victory to get more votes than any presidential candidate in history, beating Donald Trump, who got more votes than in 2016 and more than any sitting president in history. Many election challenges filed by Trump and his supporters were quickly dismissed, often on technical grounds without addressing the specific accusations. Our second category of voting issues involves alleged election mistakes. In Georgia's close election, numerous anomalies surfaced during forced recounts. In Ware County, a small tabulation error is faulted for taking 37 votes away from Trump on Election Day. Bigger errors in other Georgia precincts with strikingly similar stories. In both Fayette and Floyd counties, Donald Trump was shorted 1,200 votes on memory cards that somehow weren't counted on Election Day. In Michigan, Shiawassee County added 100,000 votes for Biden on election night that he didn't actually get. Observers flagged the error and the tally was corrected. Antrim County reported that Biden beat Trump by 3,000 votes. Unlikely in the Republican stronghold, a recount produced the same results, but persistent challenges eventually revealed that Trump actually defeated Biden with 56% of the vote. Such tabulation errors give insight into how susceptible to human influence and error vote tallies can be. Our third category of voting issues is outright alleged fraud. But before we get to 2020, a documented case showing how election results can be manipulated live. The case was prosecuted in Philadelphia last year. Ex-Congressman Ozzie Myers, a Democrat, led a major vote fraud ring that operated in 5 elections leading up to 2020. He bribed election judges. They would report to him on Election Day how many legit votes were being cast in real time to calculate how many fraudulent votes should be added for the preferred candidates. The corrupt election judges would later attest to the accuracy of the machine results and certify the final fake counts. The example demonstrates that ballot counts and machine tallies are only as reliable as those in charge. In Wisconsin, an audit uncovered an operation to allegedly collect ballots illegally at nursing homes in the 2020 election. The nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau determined that the Elections Commission broke the law with nursing home oversight. In Georgia, an activist from Coalition for the People's Agenda allegedly got caught submitting 70 false voter registration applications and was referred for prosecution. In Virginia, Prince William County Registrar Michelle White faces trial on felony charges of illegally altering the county's 2020 election results. She said she suspects the allegations are politically motivated. In Florida, a Democrat blew the whistle on what she says is an illegal vote scheme that's operated for years in the Orlando area, with paid brokers coercing voters in black communities to hand over their ballots. In Texas, a social worker is charged with 134 felony counts of election fraud. She allegedly registered people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to vote in 2020 without their knowledge or consent. She pleaded guilty to election fraud. And in California, 2 men were charged in an alleged scheme to submit more than 8,000 fraudulent voter registration applications leading up to the 2020 election. Friends Gary Snyder and David Lara say neither Democrat nor Republican leaders cared to unearth long-standing voter fraud in their hometown of San Luis, Arizona.
I recorded 23 videos, 23 different crimes.
The 2 Republicans and a mostly Hispanic Democrat border community took it upon themselves to expose what they said was well-known systemic election fraud.
I mean, you're supposed to vote one person, one vote, and now people are telling me they have 5 to 10 ballots. That's what got my curiosity going. And they were taking advantage of a mostly farm-working community, Latino. Very few spoke English, very few, and very easy to take advantage of.
So Were people actually saying to you, I can get you 5 votes?
Yes, yes. And everything is, there's a string attached. So in other words, you can trade for a job, you can trade for a favor, you can trade for many things. And being a small community, if you have, for instance, a speeding ticket, you can get it fixed. So it depends on who you know is the favor that you can get.
Early on primary election day in 2020, they decided to set up and record video outside a polling place. They caught school board member and former mayor Guillermina Fuentes in action.
And just a lady walked up, had a ballot in her hand. Guillermina Fuentes received her ballot, opened it up, wrote on it, deciding who they're going to vote for, signed the name, and closed it. Lift open a file, and inside the file you can see in the video about 12, 13 ballots. But she took about 4 ballots out and gave it to the girl. So it's illegal in Arizona when you give someone else a ballot that's not a family direct member. So that girl walked inside, which is Alma Juarez, and hence that's why she was caught in the crime as well.
Snyder and Lara reported what they saw to law enforcement and handed over the video. After a lengthy investigation, Fuentes and 3 other women were arrested.
You can see the video, I mean, they're just so blatant, they just don't care. Broad daylight, and they're doing it.
When it comes to consequences for election mistakes or fraud, in nearly every case we examined, we found authorities often quick to accept the most innocent hypothesis. When there are arrests, charges are typically minimal, with no publicly announced effort to expose larger rings. The Antrim County, Michigan election night call for Biden when Trump had actually won, the extra 100,000 votes for Biden in Shiawassee County, innocent human errors. The lost and found memory cards in Georgia that contain mostly Trump votes, blunders, not corruption. More than 2 years later, no movement on the case in the alleged voter registration scheme in Georgia. The California pair caught submitting 8,000 fraudulent voter registration applications. One got 2 years in prison, the other 60 days in county jail. The Texas social worker charged with 134 felonies, she got 13 days in jail. In the San Luis, Arizona fraud ring, the ex-mayor Fuentes was sentenced to a month in jail. She's made public statements saying she was only helping friends and that the attacks against her were political. 2 co-defendants in the ballot fraud ring were each allowed to plead guilty to just 1 misdemeanor count of ballot abuse. They got probation only and no jail time. The case is still open against an indicted city council member in the same case. As for the ex-congressman Ozzie Myers, who was convicted in the Philadelphia ring that changed votes in 5 elections, he got just 2.5 years in prison, even though he was a repeat offender. He'd been kicked out of Congress back in 1980 and served time in prison in the bribery scandal known as AppScam. Coming up next, we're off to Panama, where there's concern over foreign adversaries being allowed to share a key trade route. Odds are many of the products you buy each day or the car that you drive came through one very specific body of water, one built with American manpower and know-how, the Panama Canal. Most days it's business as usual at this critical trade route, but there are growing concerns about who else is passing through those storied waters. Scott Thuman reports from Panama.
It is an engineering feat so large it cuts through an entire country, connecting cultures and oceans. The Panama Canal, one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. Understandable, since it took 70,000 men over 10 years to build. Opening in 1914, it revolutionized how the world trades goods. Roughly $270 billion of cargo crosses through it each year. And improving. In the last decade, adding a wider lane to triple its capacity. The Panama Canal is around 50 miles long, but it only takes about 8 hours for a ship to go from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and that can cut days, if not weeks, off of travel time.
There's a lot of details that people don't know.
Victor Echeverria is the exhibition manager at the Panama Canal Museum.
Well, they knew that eventually some ships would not fit the canal. So they thought, well, we need to build a new set of locks, wider, longer, for those ships.
But now, Panama is considering allowing a new controversial customer to frequent these locks, naval military vessels from Iran. That despite strong opposition from the U.S., which has long maintained sanctions against Iran for its support of terror groups and illicit nuclear weapons programs. In March, General Laura Richardson laid out those concerns to Congress.
Could you talk a little bit about the 2 Iranian ships that are parked outside the Panama Canal?
Very concerning because they were just in the region 2 years ago with missiles and with launchers on those same 2 ships. And so very, very concerned that they're transiting again.
These days, it's up to the Panamanians to enforce the rules. But it wasn't always that way. Since it was America that built this canal after others had failed, the U.S. had control and in turn paid Panama $10 million and yearly rent for rights to the canal zone, a 10-mile wide strip of land where the canal was dug. But in the 1970s, pressure was mounting. The Panamanians wanted the land back, and President Jimmy Carter obliged, ceding control in the year 2000, a decision many predicted the U.S. would come to regret.
And of course, it was huge. We have New Millennium, New Year's Eve, and then the triumphing of the Panama Canal. So here was celebration 24 hours a day.
Everyone?
Sure. Or on our side.
On your side?
Yes.
Though Panama is an American ally, it's getting increasingly close to our strategic rival, China, which is spending billions of dollars throughout Latin America to gain influence. Chinese companies now operate ports at both ends of this strategic waterway, prompting fears that a key trade route could be blocked in a crisis. The United States has real concerns about China's military buildup around key maritime choke points, deploying ships to build an increased presence in an area like the South China Sea, where commercial shipping carries over $5 trillion in goods, much of it headed to America. The U.S. Navy is so concerned about Iran's reach into the world's oceans, it made an unusual announcement last month of the deployment of a submarine capable of carrying up to 154 Tomahawk missiles to the Middle East. So why the real worry about a shutdown at one of the world's key maritime traffic points? 2 years ago, a cargo ship the length of 4 football fields was knocked off course by strong winds, blocking the Suez Canal for 6 days, halting shipments and sending oil prices soaring. Although an accident, it quickly became a wake-up call. And all of that raises the proverbial tensions and tides in these pivotal waters. For Full Measure, I'm Scott Thuman in Panama.
When we come back, as 2024 approaches, a look at dirty politics 2 centuries ago. As we press into the presidential campaign, it turns out today's political figures got nothing on our forefathers and their contemporaries. Lisa Fletcher reports from the library of our 6th president, John Quincy Adams.
It's been called the ugliest debate in American history.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
This presidential debate, featuring a Republican nominee riding a populist wave and a Democratic challenger who many came to see as an elitist, might have happened back in 2016. But historians will say the personal attacks and the mudslinging are the evolution of political tactics used in the 1828 presidential election, pitting Andrew Jackson against incumbent John Quincy Adams.
This is called Old House at Peacefield.
Jessica Pilkington is an historian and draws her perspective as curator of Adams National Historical Park in Quincy, Massachusetts. This sprawling property, now tucked into a suburban Boston neighborhood, is the birthplace of 6th U.S. President John Quincy Adams and his father, the 2nd U.S. President John Adams. The estate also contains an impressive collection of John Quincy Adams's books.
Welcome to the Stone Library.
Wow.
This houses all of John Quincy Adams's books. And if you can think of a topic of book, there's probably a copy of it in this building.
I want to talk about the 1828 election.
The election of 1828 is really a mudslinging election. Neither Andrew Jackson or John Quincy Adams themselves really campaign, but they have people doing it for them. Andrew Jackson was married to a woman named Rachel, and when he married her, she was not legally divorced from her previous husband. And so you're seeing people who support John Adams saying, you can't vote for Andrew Jackson, he's a bigamist.
And that was amplified then on the campaign trail?
Yes. John Quincy Adams' wife, who was born in the United Kingdom, so that was another thing that was used against John Quincy Adams, your foreign-born wife, so soon after the American Revolution.
Another political strategy Pilkington says was first popularized in the 1828 campaign was to make your opponent seem out of touch with voters. Jackson's supporters seized such an opportunity.
John Quincy Adams believed that we should have observatories and watch the skies. He, in a speech, called them lighthouses of the skies, which I think is a pretty phrase, but is latched onto as, see how out of touch this man is, a lighthouse of the sky. John Quincy Adams loses, and he loses in a landslide. These tactics for Jackson work.
It's so easy to draw parallels.
Yeah, it's not a straight line, lots of twists and turns along the way, but I think particularly in these attacks, that's one thing that kind of held on.
Standing the test of time, like the Adams Stone Library, just not as becoming. For Full Measure, I'm Lisa Fletcher in Quincy, Massachusetts.
After a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Coming up next week on Full Measure, concern in the heartland over a foreign adversary gobbling up American land and influence at a rate that may surprise you.
The federal government has a job to protect the United States, protect and defend. And they're just allowing whoever that shows up to do whatever they want, and they don't even know what the hell's going on.
Both sides in a debate over the right to buy American property next week on Full Measure. We want to take a moment to welcome the newest member of the Full Measure team, Kai Nolan Jenkins, arriving last weekend at 9 pounds, 2 ounces to proud parents Lee and his wife April. Lee is a photographer on our fine Full Measure staff. Until next time, we'll be searching for more stories that hold powers accountable. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.